Hey, happy Thursday. Good afternoon, scholars. I hope your morning went well, and I hope you're ready for an afternoon of uh, engagement, rigor, because we're going to read. We're going to start an awesome book today. Before we get into today's book, I want to share some data with you. Yesterday, only about 30% of us turned in the assignment on time. That's down from, it was 46% the other day. So both those numbers are much too low, but um, I'll take 46 over 30. So let's really work today, guys, on getting our work completed to a high level and get it turned in on time because this is school. Your learning, your need for learning doesn't stop just because most of the world did. You guys have teachers who are still working really hard for you to give you feedback and to give you lessons. So make sure you're taking advantage of that because a lot of students don't get this opportunity. Let's actually check back at yesterday's assignment. That's the wrong one. Actually, let me show you where to find this, guys. Every day when I publish that days, and I haven't published this yet, but I will. Every day when I post today's work, I'm going to include the exemplar from the day before. So let's take a look at yesterday's work. Okay, guys, this was a tricky reading. I know it was. Some of you expressed some frustration, Shada, but you still tried your best. You make sure that you're logging in for office hours if you're having trouble with assignment, because that's going to really help you out. In both 6th and 7th grade, the students who have been logging into office hours are the students who have been doing better on the assignments. So let's take a look at yesterday's questions. Number one threw a lot of us off. A lot of people thought the answer was A. Let's go back and look at the Sixth Amendment together. Take a second right now to get your notes ready because you shouldn't just be watching this like it's a TV show. You should watch it like it's class, right? So you need to have notes ready, okay? All right. United States Constitution, Sixth Amendment. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury. Impartial means the reason it's good to have a trial that's speedy is, when you're on trial, a lot of times you're in jail. And so if you didn't do something and your trial lasts for years and years, you're going to be in jail for years and years, even if you shouldn't be. And so speedy doesn't mean necessarily it goes really fast. It just means they don't let trials drag on for years and years because your life is on hold. Um, Public trials are important because people can see what's happening. So it helps make sure things are fair because it's right in front of everybody. So they can't be really sneaky and shady as much if everything's out in public. By an impartial means fair or unbiased, jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. So if I commit a crime in Chandler, my trial is going to be in Chandler, right? It's where the crime happened. Which district shall be previously ascertained by law and to be informed of the nature and the cause of the accusation. This means when you're accused of a crime, the police and your lawyers, it's their responsibility to make sure you are very clear on what exactly you're being charged with, what that entails, what that means, and what the consequences might be. To be confronted with the witnesses against him. That means no secret witnesses. The witnesses testify in court in front of everybody. That gives the accused attorney the chance to question them as well. To have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. So the accused gets to call their own witnesses if it's going to help them. And finally, this one's the tricky one, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Counsel, guys, legal counsel means help. That's a lawyer, okay? So going back to the question, the right to a defense lawyer, that is counsel, right? So that is it. So you do have the right to counsel or a defense lawyer. You do have the right to a quick trial. You do have the right to understand the charges that are brought against you. Being tried in your home state, that's nowhere in there, right? Like I said, the trial happens where the crime happens, not where the accused is from. They might be the same, but if they're not, if someone from Texas commits a crime in Phoenix, the trial's going to happen in Phoenix. Doesn't matter if the person's from Texas. Right, a peremptory challenge. If you take a look back at really paragraph 5 and 6, the prosecutor and the defense attorneys shall then object to the inclusion of certain jurors. Attorneys have two types of objections to potential jurors: challenges for cause and peremptory challenges. While attorneys may have a legitimate reason to exclude a juror when making a challenge for cause, they typically do not need to give reasons for peremptory challenges. In the past, prosecutors and defense attorneys may have used peremptory challenges to exclude jurors who were either of the same or different race or background as the defendant. In a number of recent decisions, however, the Supreme Court has placed restrictions on attorneys' ability to use peremptory challenges based on a juror's race, gender, and other attributes. So a peremptory challenge is when a lawyer wants someone not included, not to be on the jury. Now, why would they use that? Well, if I'm trying to prove that somebody is guilty and I think there's someone who might have reason to feel a connection or sympathy for the person I'm trying to prove is guilty, and I want to win this case, I might try to have that person sent off, right? In the perfect world, this would only be used to send off people who have, let's say the defendant is black, and it's really clear that this juror seems like a racist person because they keep answering questions in a racist way. They should probably be kicked off because it's clear they're not going to be impartial. In a perfect world, this would only be used for fairness, but sometimes lawyers use it to make the trial maybe even more unfair. This would be the case if the accused was a black man, and the lawyer, the potential juror, just because they're black, I don't want them on because I think they might be fair, or they might sympathize with this person. That's when it's not supposed to be. That's how it's not supposed to be used. Going down to number 3, I really want to emphasize, guys, and it's Miss Jenny. It's Thursday, so it's her office hours. Miss Jenny's going to emphasize this too in office hours. ASAC response, guys. You got to go through the whole process. You got to make your claim. You got to give your context and evidence, and then you got to bring it home with your own thoughts. The question for number 3 was, is it true or false that a jury of peers means one has the right to be tried by people who share similar backgrounds and experiences? For example, a Hispanic male in her 20s accused of a crime has the right to have at least one Hispanic female in her 20s serving on the juror. This is false. So first, I'm going to answer the question. False. Person does not have the right to be tried by people who share similar backgrounds and experiences. Now I'm going to start to talk about what I read in the text. I'm talking about what the text says. So this is evidence, right? Even if it's not a quote, guys, if you're just talking about what the text says and not your thinking about the text, it counts as evidence or context. The term peers, I spelled usually wrong, usually means friends or classmates, but that's not what it means in the court. In this case, it means, and now I'm taking this quote from, I believe, maybe the second paragraph, right here. In this case, it means, quote, a jury of fellow citizens. Now here's my thinking, right? This may make juries less fair for some people than others. If someone lives in a community where they are a different race than most people, they may be viewed negatively by the people who are prejudiced against them, right? So this was my thinking of how I explained that no, you don't actually have the right to have people that are like you on the jury. My take is this might be tricky for some people. It might make their trial less fair. All right. Um, all right. So I want to do a quick shout out to G Ray. G Ray made sure this was her writing. She named it. G Ray, you guys don't have to format you don't have to bold certain things or color code it like I do. I do that to show you the different steps. But G Ray did a great job answering the question in her assertion. She said false, because if they have a jury of their peers, it means they have fellow citizens. G Ray did also a really good job. She gave a couple pieces of evidence. She gave this one: you may be wondering exactly what that entails. Contrary to popular belief, defendants are not entitled to a jury containing members of their own gender, race, age. And then she gave another quote that says jury of peers actually means jury of fellow citizens. Then she does a really good job in her analysis. This proves that it is false, and a jury of peers, she wraps it up here, is actually a jury of citizens attending that trial of jury. My one push for G-Ray, and for anybody, we have two back-to-back quotes right here. You don't need to do two back-to-back quotes, guys. You should always have just pick your best quote, and then make sure you have analysis after it. In this case, and I'll be more specific when I write out my questions from now on. This question really only needed one piece of evidence, because it's pretty straightforward. So I would push G-Ray to pick the best piece of evidence and maybe the shorter one. To me, this quote, the second quote that she used, was stronger because it got right to her point and it was shorter. So to all my writers, don't do back-to-back quotes. Always just pick the best one and then have your thinking behind it. All right, let's get into today's lesson. Today we're going to actually start 12 Angry Men. This is the exposition or beginning of a book, so it's always so important during the beginning of a story to be paying really close attention to the setting and the characters, because we're being introduced to them, and the author's going to be given lots of clues right off the bat so we can pick up on their personality as fast as possible before the action really starts. I'm just going to show you, for those of you who aren't able to actually have a physical copy of the book, and if you're having a hard time finding, I know Luis Ruiz emailed me very responsibly to tell me that, hey, I logged on to Open Library, I couldn't find that book. Luis and anyone else who needs it, I found a copy and I included it in our resources. Okay, so if you go to your classwork and you go to resources, I have the 12 Angry Men PDF right here, ready to go. So you guys can read it right here as another way to read. So today, your focus question is, does the jury take the judge's directions seriously? Okay, let's look through the questions that we're going to be asked, and then we'll read some of the first couple pages together. Okay. The play is going to start off with the judge's message or his directions to the jurors. Your task from that first paragraph is to paraphrase his directions or his message in your own words. I want you to just put it in, how would you say it? You can shorten it, but I want to make sure you understand what his directions are. You're going to show that you understand by putting it in your own words. Next one's a setting question. Real simple. This is a 1-point question because it's pretty simple. In what city does this take place? Question 3 is a 2-pointer. Describe the setting, which is the jury room. Provide at least 4 details. Pick 4 details about this room that you think are important, because where a story takes place, its setting is going to impact the characters of what happens. So pick some details about this jury room that you think are important, that are going to kind of impact the story itself. And our focus question for the day is, the jury takes the judge's directions seriously. Agree or disagree? This one, I'm being very clear. You need to have two pieces of evidence to prove your claim. So if you say that, yeah, it's clear that they do take it seriously, you need to have two different pieces of evidence that show that they take it seriously. If you're saying no, they're not taking this very seriously, you need to have two different pieces of evidence. And again, pick one piece, explain how it proves your point. Pick another piece, explain how it proves your point. You got to go evidence, analysis, evidence, analysis. Okay? All right, let's get into it. If I can find it. Okay. Actually, guys, I apologize. I have a few more things I want to explain. This is a play, so its formatting is different than a book. Okay? Here is kind of what the actors look like in the movie. You can imagine them how you want to imagine them, but I think this was intended to be a cast of all white men on the jurors, because that's going to actually factor into the play. Okay, in a play, there's going to be lots of descriptions mixed in with who's speaking and what they're saying. Okay, so whenever you see, like right here, anything that's written in italics is directions for the actors, but also things that you're supposed to know that are happening that aren't being said, so that you can better imagine what a character is doing, how a line is supposed to be read, what they're thinking, or it's a description of the setting. Okay. um, the things they actually say are not in italics. Their names are not in italics. All right. So the stage directions, when it says, if you look at the first part, this is an example of a different play, Death of a Salesman. Charlie has appeared in the doorway. That's describing what the character's doing at that time. He's a large man, slow of speech, laconic, and movable. Now they're kind of describing him for you so you can imagine how he's moving or how he's acting. Okay? So anything that's in italics is like directions that are just for you that aren't actually being said. Okay, let's get into it. All right, 12 Angry Men by Reginald Rose. We're going to skip past the introduction, but if you want to read it, I found it really, really interesting. This guy Reginald Rose has a really interesting life. This goes through the cast, which you don't need to know. These are the people who played it in this particular version of the play. Not really important. All right, here we go. Judge's voice. Setting: a courtroom of a New York court of law time, 1957. Act 1. The jury room of a New York court law, 1957, a very hot summer afternoon. It is a large, drab, bare room in need of painting. This is the jury room where they go to deliberate, to make their decision. It is a large, drab, bare room in need of painting, with 3 windows in the back wall through which can be seen the New York skyline. Off the jury room is a washroom with wash basin, soap, and towels visible on stage, and a lavatory beyond. A large scarred table is center with 12 chairs around it. A bench stands against the wall, and there are several chairs and a small table in the room, plus a water cooler with water cups and a wastebasket, and an electric fan over the bench, and a clock above the water cooler, and a row of hooks of coats with a shelf over it. There are pencils, pads, and ashtrays on the table. At night, the room is lit by fluorescent lighting with a switch next to the door. They're giving us all these directions, guys, so we can really imagine what this room looks like. And also, if we were to put on this play, these are directions to the stage people of what props they need to get and how they need to arrange it. When the curtain rises, and all of this is all in italics, guys, so no one's talking yet. When the curtain rises, the room is empty. The voice of the judge is heard. Here we go. Judge's voice. And that concludes the court's explanation of the legal aspects of this case. And now, gentlemen of the jury, I come to my final instruction to you. Murder in the first degree, premeditated homicide, is the most serious charge tried in our criminal courts. You've listened to the testimony, and you've had the law read to you and interpreted as it applies to this case. It now becomes your duty to try and separate the facts from the fancy. One man is dead. The life of another is at stake. I urge you to deliberate honestly and thoughtfully. If there is a reasonable doubt, then you must bring me a verdict of not guilty. If, however, there is no reasonable doubt, then you must, in good conscience, find the accused guilty. However you decide, your verdict must be unanimous. That means everyone has to agree, guys. All of them voting the same, guilty or not guilty. In the event you find the accused guilty, the bench will not entertain a recommendation for mercy. The death sentence is mandatory in this case. The door opens and the guard enters. He carries a clipboard with a list of the jurors. I don't envy your job. You are faced with a grave responsibility. Thank you, gentlemen. There is a brief pause. Sound of jurors walking, talking. Guard. All right, let's move along, gentlemen. The jurors enter. The guard checks his list. The 9th juror, an old man, crosses into the washroom and exits to the lavatory. The 4th juror begins to read a newspaper. Several jurors open the windows. Others move awkwardly about the room. There's no conversation for a few moments. The 3rd juror takes out some notes and studies them. The 2nd juror crosses to the water cooler and gets a cup of water. The foreman tears a sheet from a notepad, and tears up little slips of papers for ballots. The guard crosses to the 12th juror and checks his name. The 7th juror crosses to the 4th juror and offers him a stick of gum. The 4th juror shakes his head. 7th juror, turning to the 8th juror. You want some gum? 8th juror, smiling. No, thanks. The 7th juror vigorously chews a piece of gum himself and crosses to the 6th juror. 7th juror, mopping his brow. You know something? I phoned up for the weather. It is the hottest day of the year. The 6th juror nods and gazes out the window. You'd think they'd at least air condition the place. I almost dropped dead in court. Guard. Okay, gentlemen, everyone's here. If there's anything you want, I'm right outside. Just knock. The guard exits, and in the silence the sound is heard of the door being locked. 5th juror. I never knew they locked the door. 10th juror. Sure, they locked the door. What'd you think? 5th juror. I don't know. It just never occurred to me. The 10th juror crosses and pauses beside the foreman and indicates to the slips of paper. Hey, what's that for? Foreman. Foreman, guys, is the juror who's in charge. There's nothing special about him. One person's just kind of designated to kind of be the leader. So the foreman is one of the jurors. Foreman. Well, I figured we might want to vote by ballots. 10th juror. Great idea. Maybe we can get him elected senator. He laughs until he begins to cough. The foreman looks at his watch and compares it to the clock. The 3rd juror takes a cup of water from the water cooler, moves to the 2nd juror, and looks around the room as he sips the water. 3rd juror to the 2nd juror. How'd you like it? 3rd juror, mildly, right? So that direction, guys, tells me how I'm supposed to read it. I don't know. It was pretty interesting. 3rd juror. Yeah, I was falling asleep. 2nd juror. I mean, I've never been on a jury before. 3rd juror. Really? I've sat on juries, and it always amazes me the way these lawyers can talk and talk and talk, even when the case is as obvious as this one. I mean, did you ever hear so much talk about nothing? Second juror, well, I guess they're entitled. Third juror, sure they are. Everybody deserves a fair trial. That's the system. Listen, I'm the last one to say anything against it. But I'm telling you, sometimes I think we'd be better off if we took these tough kids and slapped them down before they make trouble, you know? Save us a lot of time and money. The second juror looks nervously at the third juror, nods, rises, and moves to the water cooler, refills his cup, and stands alone, sipping. Seventh juror to the foreman, hey, how about we get started here? Third juror, yeah, let's get this over with. We've probably all got things to do. Foreman, well, I was figuring we'd take a 5-minute break. I mean, the old man's in the bathroom. Fifth juror to the foreman, hesitantly. Are we going to sit in order? Foreman, I don't know. The eighth juror is looking out the window. 12th juror to the eighth juror. Not a bad view. The eighth juror nods. What'd you think of the case? This is still the 12th juror talking, guys. The eighth juror doesn't answer. I had a lot of interest for me. No dead spots, know what I mean? I'll tell you, we were lucky to get a murder case. I figured us for a burglary or an assault or something. Those can be the dullest. He looks out the window. Say, isn't that the Woolworth building? That's right. Eighth juror. That's right. 12th juror. Funny. I've lived here my whole life and I've never been in it. The eighth juror gazes out the window and the 12th juror looks at him for a moment and moves away. Seventh juror to the 10th juror. Goddamn waste of time. He laughs. 10th juror. Yeah, can you imagine sitting there for 3 days just for this? Seventh juror. What about that business with the knife? I mean, asking grown-up people to believe that kind of BS? 10th juror. Well, look, you gotta expect that. You know what you're dealing with. Seventh juror. Yeah, I suppose so. I'm gonna pause there, guys, okay? Um, you're gonna keep reading until the 5th page when someone says Milwaukee. Okay, you're gonna stop there. Again, your focus question for the day is agree or disagree. The jury takes the judge's directions seriously. Make sure you are doing the steps, guys. What's your claim? Give some context, evidence, analysis. How does that piece of evidence you show prove your point that the juror does or not take it seriously? Now give another piece of evidence. Introduce it first, then later on, blah, blah, blah. Here's your quote. How does that second piece of evidence prove your thinking? All right, make sure that you're really following these steps. And I can't wait to see your thinking, and I can't wait to see our numbers go up as we get our work in on time. Office hours today, make sure that you do as much of the reading as possible before you go into the office hours so that you're ready to discuss. All right, guys, have a good one. I will see you tomorrow.